Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're taking a look at a newly buffed Pokemon from the Season 24 balance update for Go Battle League, and that is Rockwrecker Shadow Crustle in the Great League Summer Cup. Now, Crustle's limited coverage prevents it from having a ton of success in the open formats. However, in a limited format where the power level is a lot lower, and there's way fewer Pokemon that just completely shut down Crustle's energy, Shadow Crustle can end up being a terrifying closer. I paired it with a Gastrodon on the lead and a Furret safe switch, and went 9-3 across the board. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches. Let's take a look at Shadow Crustle in the Summer Cup. Off to a nightmare start in game number 1, leading Gastrodon into a Bullet Seed Credilli. I stayed in to check the fast move, and the moment I saw Bullet Seed, I had to immediately bail into Furret. Furret is going to be debuffed with Rock Tomb, and now out comes Raikou, the opponent running an incredibly spicy pick. Raikou, we know, now has incredibly fast pacing courtesy of Aura Sphere. Very nice overfarm there by my opponent. They're going to cap time my Swift with their Aura Sphere, and there's no chance Furret is ever surviving. Back in comes Gastrodon. I'm going to absorb the Aura Sphere, look to get them very low, and then switch into Crustle and snipe down with Fury Cutters. I want an energy head start, and that's going to prove to be a game-winning play, as in the back they have Fury Cutter Golisopod. If I had stayed in with the Gastrodon farm down, and then they just brought in that Golisopod, I would always be behind with the Crustle because we have identical pacing. But since I have the energy lead, I'm going to be able to win the twos. And while Fury Cutters do a lot of damage to Shadow Crustle, my opponent will not be able to farm me into Bullet Seed range. So at this point, I'm feeling extremely confident about taking home this win. Shadow Crustle is going to be able to outpace, get to the X-Scissor. That's going to be KOing Golisopod. And then all that's left is a fully dry Credilli. In comes Credilli. Bullet Seed simply will not do enough damage. Shadow Crustle absolutely ruthless. X-Scissor KOs Credilli, and that's a good game. Hopping into game number 2, picking up a great lead, Gastrodon into Turtonator. Opponent safe switches into a Dunsparce, and they just have absolutely nothing for Gastrodon. I throw the Body Slam immediately because this way I can actually prevent them from sneaking the rollout due to the fact that switching puts them one turn desynced. I'm very comfortable staying in and playing this out. I know that Gastrodon is always going to be able to win Switch. And with winning Switch, I can make sure that the Turtonator is going to be on the Furret later in the game. Here I will farm up pretty close to 100 energy. Body Slam will easily be enough to KO the Dunsparce. And now I have a bunch of energy for whatever gets brought in. It's going to be Oranguru. Oranguru, a pretty spicy pick. We do have some pretty good options into it in the back. Unfortunately, I can't quite get to the Water Pulse, but back-to-back Body Slams will still inflict some solid damage, getting Oranguru quite low. Now I'm going to send in Crustle. These Fury Cutters adding up. They're guaranteed to switch into Turtonator, so I will get the 0-turn switch into Furret, and it's actually an Ember Turtonator. I completely forgot that Ember was a move that Turtonator could use. I'm so used to seeing Turtonator just spamming out moves with Incinerate, but now it is Ember. Ember means they're going to get to the Dragon Claw pretty quickly, but it definitely looks weird to see Turtonator not with the 5-turn Incinerate and doing basically no fast move damage. After they landed the Dragon Claw, they're now going to go for a Brutal Swing. I want to try and ramp up my fast move pressure. I overfarm to try and make them think it's not a Trailblaze, and now the threat of fast move pressure is going to force their hand. They will go for the Brutal Swing, KOing for it, but now I can send in Crustle. Crustle just Fury Cutters down. Back in comes Turtonator. Turtonator will get to the Brutal Swing. I should be one Fury Cutter off of the back-to-back X-Scissors. I could probably farm down, but to be safe, I will just throw the double moves since I have it. So X-Scissor number 1 will get the shield. We get X-Scissor number 2 as the Ember goes through. The Turtonator is basically 1 HP, so this will absolutely pick up the knockout and secure the win. Tricky lead in the next match, Gastrodon into Shadow Poliwrath. Honestly, Poliwrath wasn't really a Pokemon that I was considering when team building, and I ended up seeing it a few times. It was always on the lead, and my team is very, very soft to Poliwrath. Here, my opponent does end up grabbing an early shield, but with Fury Cutter's pacing, I'm able to build up to the back-to-back X-Scissors. X-Scissor is going to be shielded, and I have another one, so I can just cap tie them. And now my Crustle is in a very nice spot. I'm able to force the final shield from my opponent, and I decide to double shield. In hindsight, I don't think this was the best play ever. I could have let it go and instead gone for an aggressive farm down with the Furret, because now, unfortunately for me, this Poliwrath is going to get a huge farm on the Crustle, which is double debuffed. So I think I need to pivot. I pivot into the Gastrodon and immediately regret that decision as it's a Ferrothorn in the back as their final Pokemon. Oh, that is absolutely miserable. Water Pulse is going to land. I am just going to go for the Body Slam because I want whatever damage I can get onto this Pokemon. I need to try and get to a Trailblaze with my Furret. If I can get to a Trailblaze, I can win this game. I should outpace if they throw one in the move, but they undertap. That's really bad for me. Now I'm going to get outpaced by the Poliwrath. I'm going to need to switch into the Shadow Crustle. Crustle needs to get to the Rock Wrecker. We get to the Rock Wrecker. I know it's resisted, but I need it to KO. Shadow Crustle, Rock Wrecker. Big damage, but they hang on 1 HP. This is Dynamic Punch, and that's going to be a loss. We made it as close as we could. It's actually a Scald, but unfortunately the Ferrothorn has slightly too much health, and we will lose that match. We've got a mirror lead in the next game, Gastrodon versus Gastrodon. Now, this is a rare moment when I actually have a pretty good IV Pokemon. I have the rank 1 Gastrodon. I caught it before Gastrodon was good, I think during one of the Go Fests, and just held on to it, because at the time, it was a terrible Pokemon, but hey, if it's a rank 1, you hold on to it. And it's ended up being pretty good since. However, what's not pretty good is safe switching a Furret and then getting met with a Volt Switch Fortress. This is tough. I can boost up my attack with Trailblaze to try and make my Sucker Punches do more damage, but my charge attacks are completely walled, and my opponent is able to instantly undo my boost with a Rock Tomb. At the very least, I will get my opponent pretty low. I'm hoping that with this Swift Landing, I can potentially put them into Fury Cutter downrange, but my opponent, interestingly enough, doesn't want Switch. Instead, they intentionally overfarm to set up farm for something they have in the back. It's going to be Fearow. I pivot into Gastrodon trying to get to a move, and that's going to force their energy. Had they shielded and gone for a farm down, I would have been in trouble, but because they threw instantly, now it's going to be an endgame where we have identical pacing. I get to my X-Scissor in 10 turns, they get to their Drill Peck in 10 turns. These Fury Cutters are shredding through Fearow. Fearow, not the tankiest Pokemon around, and you can feel it in this matchup. My goodness, Shadow Fury Cutter should not be doing nearly this much damage. This game is going to come down to a 50-50. I'm going to have my second X-Scissor. At the time, they have their second Drill Peck. I decide that I'm going to switch. So I get the shield, I switch, it's a simul KO, and that's going to be the win as back in comes the Gastrodon, but I have the X-Scissor banked on Crustle, down goes Gastro, and that's a good game. We move to the next match, leading Gastrodon into another Gastrodon. Back-to-back mirror matches. I decided to switch out of the last one, and even though I was able to win, I didn't like how that game ended up playing out, so I think this time, I'll probably just stay in the lead. Wait a minute, hold on. Did I just win Charge Attack Priority in a Gastrodon mirror? I have the rank 1. Actually, looking at their combat power, my guess is they probably have the 1-15-12, so same attack and defense, but just lower HP. Here, my opponent lives on 1 HP, their lower HP not factoring in here. They will win the zeros, and I'm going to take the energy head start on Furret. Out comes Fearow, and it's the second time we've seen this Gastrodon Fearow combination. Being up 2 turns in this matchup is massive because now instead of having identical pacing, Furret's just strictly going to outpace. They will CMP tie. I'm more than happy to let the Drill Peck go, and if they want to hold on to this energy, they're going to have to give me a shield. And I will absolutely take Shadow Crustle with a shield. They're going to send in Dugong. I'm going to send in Shadow Crustle. This is exactly where Shadow Crustle wants to be. I've saved 2 shields up until this exact moment, and here is where I use them. I think that the only way I lose this game is if I go for an X-Scissor bait. So I'm just going to full send the Rock Wrecker. Rock Wrecker is going to be shielded. I'm 1 turn off Rock Wrecker number 2. Switch Clock is just barely not up for my opponent, which means I can instantly tap that Rock Wrecker. Dugong will get sent back to the Pokeball. In comes Fearow. I switch in Furret. I have the health needed to Sucker Punch down Fearow and take the win. Gastrodon versus Poliwrath in the next match. The last Poliwrath lead that I saw honestly didn't go great for me. Poliwrath ended up having double grass in the back. I hard pivoted Gastrodon because I didn't want to give up a bunch of farm, and that ended up costing me. It looks like this trainer has different ideas. They actually have an Oranguru. Oranguru taking some pretty significant damage from Sucker Punch. They go for the Trailblaze, and I'm going to hope that Trailblaze of my own will allow me to Sucker Punch down before they get the Brutal Swing. So I go for the Trailblaze, but it's not enough damage. They're going to make a +1 Brutal Swing, and this will definitely knock me out. I need switch advantage, so I'm going to put up the shield, the Sucker Punch KOs, and back in comes Poliwrath. Poliwrath immediately under pressure from a boosted Swift. There's the switch to Gastrodon. In the back is Shadow Girafarig. So instead of double grass, this is double confusion. The problem with Shadow Girafarig is it is so frail. Girafarig is just getting melted by the pressure from the Mud Slaps and the Body Slams. Girafarig, they have to throw or they're just going to get KO'd. So Girafarig is forced to fire off that Psychic Fangs, but this is just going to give Crustle the energy head start. And now Crustle will very comfortably get to an X-Scissor to take home this win. Poliwrath will go for the Icy Wind, but it only delays the inevitable, as even resisted and -1, the Poliwrath just doesn't have the health needed to survive this move. X-Scissor picks up the knockout, and we're able to take the win. Gastrodon into Shadow Scizor in the next match. Shadow Scizor would be awful for Crustle, so very happy to catch it on the lead. Scizor will go for a potential Trailblaze. I always have to respect it. They full send, and now I'm just going to go for the Body Slam. Gastrodon can win the one straight Body Slam. It does not have to worry about full sending a move. My opponent is going to no shield, which is the correct call. Now they bring in Jellicent, and this is actually scary. If my opponent doesn't respect the potential Earth Power, I could very well lose the game, but I can't give up alignment. They end up shielding the Water Pulse, and that is what's probably going to win me this game. Furret is such a dominating matchup at a Jellicent, and Crustle is so poor that I couldn't afford to pivot out. In the back is the Dene, and this is very fine for Shadow Crustle. Shadow Crustle, I'm going to be no shield in the first, because this can only be the Parabolic. As long as I no shield the Parabolic, I have a pretty good ranked Shadow Crustle, so I should be able to survive all the Thunder Shocks and make a second Rock Wrecker. And even though they're going to be able to buff up their defense to +2, I don't think anyone told Shadow Rock Wrecker about that, because Shadow Rock Wrecker is an incredibly powerful move. Keep in mind, they're at +2 defense, and the Rock Wrecker just shreds the Dene. Furret snipes down with the Sucker Punch, and my opponent will resign the match. Great lead in the next match. Gastrodon into Empoleon. They save switch into Shadow Kingdra. And one weakness to this team, I would say, is I don't have like a Steel or a Fairy in the back to counter a Kingdra safe swap. So for Kingdra safe swap, it's definitely going to be a committee. I send in the Furret, no shielding, because even a Shadow Outrage would not KO. They go for the Swift, and I immediately under-tap my own Swift. This Swift is going to be probably picking up the knockout, so they will put up the shield. And now they're farming so much energy. Tough call to make, but I need switch advantage. So I will end up shielding. They throw instantly there. They're able to force my final shield, but I should be able to get a nice farm down. Opponent's going to pivot into Credilli. I aggressively switch into Crustle, and I'm able to switch fast enough to outpace them and get this X-Scissor. X-Scissor lands. That's massive damage. Credilli will return fire with the Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb connects. Crustle hangs on, and we both stop tapping. Neither one of us wants to give each other farm, but since they got me to 1 HP, I decided to just take the knockout. They bring back in the Empoleon, but Empoleon is only going to get 1 Metal Sound. And as long as that's only a 1 Metal Sound head start, I feel pretty comfortable. Hydro Cannon will get me very low. I just have to watch for a catch with Furret, overfarm by 1, make sure I see that Penguin Flipper start to go for the Metal Sound animation, knock them out with the Trailblaze, in comes Kingdra, and boosted Sucker Punches will secure that farm down. Hopping into the final match. Oh, that's a really rough lead. Gastrodon into Toedscruel. I save switch into Furret. That's going to be answered with Shadow Empoleon. That was a pretty fast switch in from my opponent. Had they thrown any additional Mud Slaps, I could have outpaced and then dictated switch advantage. But unfortunately, I cannot dictate switch advantage here. I will get a shield from my opponent, but even though I have a very good Furret, I just cannot survive enough Metal Sounds to make it to that Swift. I'm going to have to absorb energy on Gastrodon and hope that Crustle will be able to sweep. I snipe with the Crustle. I take a Metal Sound in the process, but I wanted an energy head start. In the back is Shadow Kingdra. My goodness, these Dragon Breaths are absolutely deleting Crustle. I just need to make it to a second X-Scissor. I'm definitely going to be shielding up a Swift. I really hope they don't have Octazooka. They do have Octazooka, and they get the debuff. Oh, that is so bad for me. That debuff is catastrophic. I launch an X-Scissor. That's going to land. It does not KO. In comes Toedscruel. I'm able to transfer the Mud Slap. I believe I'm now 1 off the X-Scissor, so I'm very close to that move. Getting this Water Pulse is extremely important. It ends up being a CMP tie there. Gastrodon into Toedscruel. Toedscruel will go for an undercharge. They do have a move loaded, and they throw it here. So they're going to try and burn the switch timer with this move to try and get the game-winning catch. I don't think their clock's up, and it's not. So we get that X-Scissor. X-Scissor will knock them out. They still have 1 HP on the Kingdra, but Fury Cutter will KO. That was a pretty scary one, but thankfully we are still able to get the win. All in all, Shadow Crustle led to some very fun Summer Cup sets today. I believe with this version of the team, I went 9-3. As I mentioned, I had a few games to start the day where I was testing out different leads. At one point, I had Volt Switch Fortress and Lickitung, but that team felt too soft to fire. Putting Gastrodon on the team just felt right. This team, if you're running Crustle, you're going to want a really, really good check into the steals, because that's Crustle's weakness. Crustle has basically no play into the steals because everything is resisted. However, if you're able to get shields down, a Shadow Rock Wrecker, even when it's resisted, can inflict huge damage onto those steel types. So I think Shadow Crustle, it's a bit on the spicier side of things, but if you're able to manage your energy and potentially try and get it a shield advantage if possible, Shadow Crustle has such incredible sweeping potential in this meta. Overall, I think this is a pretty enjoyable meta so far. I did see a few teams where, like the double confusion, where I could get a little bit worried about it devolving into just a fast move beatdown over time, but for now, I'm having a lot of fun with Shadow Crustle. I think Furret ended up working a lot better over Lickitung, because the biggest worry with Lickitung is if you end up in a matchup like, let's say, Credilli, and you get debuffed quite a bit, you don't have the ability that Furret does to reset those debuffs and get your fast move damage back to normal. So after testing both, Furret felt like the better pick for me overall. I like the fact that it's slightly faster than Lickitung, and even though you don't quite have the bulk, being able to undo those debuffs from Credilli is really nice, especially when you're leading a Pokemon in Gastrodon that's very soft to that Mon. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoy watching content like this, please do consider leaving a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is genuinely so appreciated. So thank you guys so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.